Fear doesn't show up dressed like a villain. It doesn't come crashing through the door in a way that's obvious and easy to spot. No, fear is subtle. It's quiet. It slips in unnoticed, takes a seat beside you, and starts whispering into your ear. The voice of fear is smooth, familiar, and persuasive. It doesn't scream, it reasons. It tells you things that sound rational, responsible, even protective. But what fear offers you isn't protection. It's a prison. A well-decorated one, sure. But a prison all the same. The dangerous thing about fear is that it sounds like truth. It uses your own voice. It speaks in a tone you trust. It says things like, "No's not the right time," or "Maybe you should wait until you're more prepared," or "You're not qualified yet." It doesn't always say, "You can't." Sometimes it says, "You shouldn't." Sometimes it says, "It's too risky," or "Think about what people will say." These aren't loud denials of your potential. They're gentle nudges toward hesitation. But hesitation is where momentum dies. Fear plays smart. It doesn't want you to know it's fear. It wants you to think it's logic, maturity, realism. It hides behind responsibility. It wears the mask of wisdom. But look deeper and you'll realize fear is always trying to protect the version of you that has never tried. It's working overtime to keep you exactly where you are. And if it succeeds, it wins not by destroying your dream outright, but by convincing you to put it on a shelf until someday. And we both know someday never shows up on its own. Think about the last time you had an idea, a goal, or a calling that lit a fire in you. The moment it appeared, something else followed it quickly. That voice. The one that started asking questions. Are you sure? What if it doesn't work? What if you fail? What if they laugh? That voice isn't your enemy. It's your familiar. It knows all your insecurities, all your weak spots, and it presses on them one by one until you start to back down. That's how fear operates. It doesn't need force, it just needs time. Give it long enough, and it will talk you out of everything you were born to do. Fear's greatest trick is convincing you that staying still is safer than taking the leap. That being comfortable is better than being courageous. That protecting yourself from failure is more important than pushing toward greatness. But here's the catch. Staying still doesn't actually keep you safe. It just keeps you stuck. Growth demands discomfort. Progress demands risk. You can't evolve and stay secure at the same time. So fear makes you trade your future for a false sense of stability. What's worse is that fear tends to show up the strongest when you're closest to something real. Right before a breakthrough, it flares up, it intensifies. It throws everything it has at you. Why? Because fear recognizes what's coming. It senses your potential starting to move. It sees you waking up to your power. And so it panics. It dials up the doubt. It cranks up the confusion. It makes you question your decision. But that isn't a sign to stop. It's confirmation that you're on the right track. Fear doesn't show up to slow you down unless you're going somewhere worth reaching. But the part that really gets people, the part that makes fear so effective, is that it never shows you the full cost of obedience. It shows you the risk of moving forward, but hides the regret of standing still. It points to what might go wrong, but never what you'll miss if you don't try. It wants you so focused on the fall that you never see the flight. It tells you stories about embarrassment, failure, humiliation, but not the pride, the breakthrough, or the joy on the other side of fear. It is a master of distortion. It magnifies the pain and shrinks the possibility. And if you listen too long, you'll start mistaking limitation for reality. Let me be clear, fear is persuasive because it uses your language, your memories, your emotions. It grabs evidence from your past. Every mistake, every time you stumbled, every word of doubt someone else planted in you. And it replays it like a highlight reel, not to inform you, but to paralyze you. And because it uses facts from your past, it feels like truth. But it's not. It's not telling you who you are. It's telling you who you were. There's a difference. The fear voice is never gone. It's just waiting for the next opportunity to speak. But what you must realize is this: just because fear speaks doesn't mean you have to listen. Just because it presents its case doesn't mean it's right. Fear is persuasive, yes. But so is truth. So is belief. So is purpose. You've got to decide which voice gets the final word. There's a common myth that has quietly settled into the minds of too many people. The belief that courageous people are fearless, that the ones who take bold steps, who speak up, who lead, who leap, are somehow immune to fear, that they were born with something different in their blood. But that's not how courage works. In fact, the exact opposite is true. Courage isn't about feeling nothing. It's about feeling everything and moving forward anyway. It's about hearing fear loud and clear and choosing to act anyway. The presence of fear does not cancel out your strength. If anything, fear reveals it. Courage is a muscle, and it only grows when it's challenged. If you're waiting for the fear to disappear before you make a move, you'll be waiting forever. Fear doesn't vanish with time. It only gets quieter when it's ignored and overpowered. Courage steps in not to eliminate fear, but to walk beside it. To say, yes, I see you. I feel you. But I'm not giving you control. Every person who has done something meaningful, something life-changing, something history remembers, has felt fear. Every single one. That includes the people you admire. The ones who made it look easy. The ones who stood on stages, launched ideas, broke barriers. They all felt that tightness in the chest, that dry mouth, that inner voice begging them to sit back down. But they moved anyway. And that's what courage is. Not absence of fear, but refusal to be ruled by it. Courage is when the doubt screams and the hands shake, but the decision gets made anyway. It's when you press send on the application. It's when you get on the mic even when your voice quivers. It's walking into that room when every part of you wants to run the other way. It's showing up messy, uncertain, and raw. Because something in you refuses to live a quiet life. That's courage. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. Sometimes it's silent, but it's always powerful. There's this idea that we need to wait to feel confident before we act. But confidence is not a prerequisite to courage. It's the result. People wait to feel bold before they take the first step. But that's not how real change happens. The first step is often the most terrifying, and that's when courage matters the most. Not when everything is aligned, but when everything feels uncertain. Confidence might give you a smoother ride, but courage is what starts the engine. What most people don't understand is that fear doesn't always come dressed as terror. Sometimes it comes as hesitation. Sometimes it's just the choice to delay. Sometimes it's procrastination that looks like preparation. Courage breaks through that. It draws a line and says, enough waiting, enough doubting, enough delaying the life I know I'm meant for. Courage doesn't need you to be fearless. It just needs you to be willing. And you won't always get applause for being brave. Sometimes you'll be misunderstood. You'll take steps no one else understands. You'll speak truths that make others uncomfortable. Courage often looks lonely. It often walks ahead of approval, but that's why it matters. Because it leads, it paves the way, it clears the noise, it dares to say what others keep buried. Courage doesn't seek comfort, it seeks alignment. Alignment with who you are and who you're becoming. Think back to the times you made bold moves in the past. Chances are you didn't feel brave in the moment. You probably felt sick, unsure, maybe even terrified. but you did it. And now, when you look back, you see it differently. You see strength in that moment. You see a turning point. That's the strange thing about courage. It's often only visible in hindsight. While you're in it, it just feels like chaos. But later, it reads like power. Courage is not for special people. It's not reserved for heroes or leaders or the loudest person in the room. Courage is for anyone who refuses to let fear dictate their direction. Anyone willing to speak up instead of staying quiet, to try again after failing, to move forward even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. It's an internal decision, not an external trait. And it doesn't come from a place of having it all figured out. It comes from knowing every person is born with a vision buried deep inside them. An idea, a calling, a dream that's uniquely their own. You can feel it even if you haven't given it words yet. It stirs when you're alone. It whispers to you in moments of quiet. It tugs at you when you see others living boldly, reminding you that there's more inside you waiting to be lived. But right next to that dream, almost as if it were part of the same equation, lies fear. The moment you recognize the size of your dream is often the same moment fear starts to rise and demand your attention. What you must understand is this: your dream will never shrink to fit the size of your comfort zone. If the dream is real, it will stretch you. It will challenge everything small about the way you see yourself. And because of that, fear will always show up. It won't just come when the dream is born. It'll come every time you step closer to making it real. Fear doesn't hate your dream. It fears your movement. Because your movement threatens the false security that fear thrives on. Some people think that if a dream causes anxiety or fear, that must mean it isn't meant for them. But that couldn't be further from the truth. A dream that doesn't scare you probably isn't worthy of you. Real dreams are disruptive. They rattle your identity. They force you to question the limits you've accepted for years. And fear. Fear is simply the body's alarm system going off because you're getting ready to break out of a cage you've lived in too long. There are people who go their entire lives carrying dreams they never act on. Not because they didn't care. Not because they didn't want it bad enough, but because fear got louder than their desire. The problem is never the size of the dream. The problem is when we start believing that the fear is more powerful than the future we're meant to create. Fear is loud, but your dream is louder if you let it speak. Fear thrives in stagnation. The longer you wait to move, the more fear grows. It feeds off your hesitation. But dreams, on the other hand, grow in momentum. The more steps you take, even small ones, the more that dream begins to unfold. What starts as a distant vision becomes a path, and the path becomes purpose. But none of that happens unless you decide that your dream is worth more than your fear. It's easy to underestimate yourself when you're standing at the starting line, looking at a mountain that seems impossible to climb. You hear the voice of doubt telling you that you're too late, too inexperienced, too flawed, too unknown. But that voice doesn't know what you're capable of becoming. That voice has never seen you fight for something with everything you've got. That voice has no vision. It only has memory. It speaks from your past, not from your possibility. Your dream, on the other hand, is built from vision. It doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be willing. Sometimes fear dresses itself up in rational thoughts. It says, be practical, or know's not the time, or you need to be more stable first. It disguises itself as responsibility and calls your dream unrealistic. But here's what's truly irresponsible: ignoring your calling because it's inconvenient. Postponing your purpose because it doesn't fit inside other people's expectations. Dismissing your dream because it scares you. Fear will always make you feel like you're being smart. when you're really just being safe. And safety isn't the same as fulfillment. The people who reach their dreams aren't the ones who had no fear. They're the ones who felt it fully and still made the choice to show up. They cried through the doubt. They worked through the chaos. They failed and got up again. They didn't get a permission slip from the universe saying, "You're ready." They just decided that their dream was too important to die in silence. They saw the fear and still chose to believe. They chose to act. And because they did, their dream had the chance to breathe. Your dream is bigger than the fear because your dream has purpose. Fear has one job: to keep you small. It doesn't care if you feel empty. It doesn't care if you waste your potential. It only cares that you stay in one place. But your dream wants to wake you up. It wants to lead you toward growth, contribution, creation. It wants to stretch your voice, your mind, your presence in the world. And it will never stop knocking. No matter how many times you try to silence it, it will keep returning because it's part of who you are. There comes a moment in everyone's life when the weight of an action feels heavier than the fear of trying. That moment when you look around and realize that playing it safe hasn't brought you peace, it's brought you pressure. You see people moving forward. You see your own dreams still standing untouched in the distance. And something inside you starts to ache. That ache is called regret. And it doesn't arrive all at once. It builds slowly, over time, like water dripping on stone. You don't notice the damage until one day you feel the emptiness of what could have been. Regret doesn't ask for permission. It moves in quietly, settling in the corners of your decisions. It hides behind the words, "I should have," "I wish I had," or "if only." It's a heavy kind of silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence of missed chances, the silence of unspoken words, unlived dreams, and untaken risks. Regret lingers because you were waiting for a guarantee. You were waiting to feel ready. You were waiting for the fear to pass. But while you were waiting, life kept moving, and time didn't stop to ask if you were still thinking about it. The truth is, life doesn't wait for perfect conditions. Life rewards movement. It rewards the ones who dare to rise, even when the ground is shaking beneath them. You won't always feel strong. You won't always feel prepared. But that doesn't mean you're not capable. It just means you're human. The people who rise are not always the ones who have the clearest plan or the loudest voice. They're the ones who make a decision not to stay down when life knocks them over. You've been knocked down before. Everyone has. Maybe it was a failure. Maybe it was rejection. Maybe it was a loss that made you question everything. Those moments hurt, but they are not the final word. What defines your life is not how many times you fall. It's how many times you choose to get back up. And the key word here is choose. Rising is always a choice. It doesn't happen on its own. You have to reach for it. You have to fight for it. And you have to decide that staying down is no longer an option you're willing to accept. There's a version of you that exists on the other side of pain, on the other side of fear, on the other side of failure. But you'll never meet that version if you give up every time it gets hard. You'll never grow into that person if you let regret become your closest companion, because regret has a way of growing roots. Once it settles, it spreads into everything. It touches your confidence, your relationships, your creativity, your energy. And the longer it stays, the harder it is to move freely. That's why it's not just about chasing success. It's about avoiding the slow death of your potential. When you rise, you're not just rising for yourself. You're rising for every part of your future that depends on your courage now. You're rising for the life you haven't built yet, for the people you haven't met yet, for the experiences that are waiting on the other side of this decision. And you're rising to protect your peace from being consumed by what ifs, because nothing eats away at peace faster than a life half lived. And it's not just about the big leaps. Sometimes learning to rise means taking the smallest step forward, waking up and showing up one more day, making the call, applying again, starting over, trying something new even when you're still carrying the scars of the last time. It's these quiet acts of persistence that shape the strongest lives, not because they're flashy, but because they're real. They come from a place of refusing to settle, from a place that says, I may not have everything figured out, but I will not stay where I am. There's nothing noble about staying stuck. There's no medal for playing small. And comfort has a cost. It robs you of transformation. That's what regret trades on. It sells you safety and charges you your future. But rising demands more. It demands honesty. It demands responsibility. It demands that you stop blaming the past and start taking ownership of what comes next. Because the moment you stop making excuses is the moment you start making progress. And you'll realize that the pain of falling is nothing compared to the pain of never trying. There are moments in life when fear feels bigger than everything else. It sits heavy in your chest. It clouds your thinking. It makes you question everything you thought you believed about yourself. Fear doesn't just whisper. Sometimes it roars. It convinces you that you are not ready, not capable, not enough. And when you hear that voice long enough, you start to believe it. You start to live beneath yourself. You start to shrink your life to fit the size of your fear. But what fear never accounts for, what it never wants you to realize, is that you are stronger than anything it can throw at you. You've been through things that would have broken someone else. You've walked through seasons of pain, disappointment, and heartbreak, and you're still standing. Maybe not the same, maybe scarred, maybe tired, but you're here, and that says more than fear ever could. The fact that you've survived what you thought would destroy you is proof that your strength is not a concept. It's a lived reality. It's something you've earned in silence, through tears, through resilience that no one else may ever fully understand. Fear only sees your surface. It judges you based on how you feel in your weakest moments. It measures you by your insecurities and tries to convince you that's all you are. But it doesn't know the battles you fought in private. It doesn't know the nights you stayed up wrestling with doubt and still chose to face the next day. It doesn't know the weight you carry that no one else sees. And it doesn't know your heart, the part of you that refuses to give up even when everything tells you to. There is a kind of strength that's forged in adversity. The strength that doesn't come from comfort or ease, but from fire. From being tested and stretched. From facing things that scared you and moving forward anyway. The more you confront what scares you, the more you begin to see who you really are. Not the version of yourself that fear wants to define. Not the one shaped by past mistakes or false narratives. But the version that lives under the surface. The one that was built for more. And it doesn't matter if you don't feel strong right now. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet persistence. Sometimes it's holding on when everyone else lets go. Sometimes it's just refusing to let fear make the decisions for you. Being strong doesn't mean never being afraid. It means choosing not to bow to fear. It means feeling the tremble in your hands and the racing of your heart and deciding to act anyway. You are stronger than what scares you because fear has never truly stopped you. It's only slowed you down. You're still here. Still dreaming. Still wanting more. Even if you've taken detours. Even if you've hesitated. Even if you've failed. That desire for something greater means your strength is still alive. You wouldn't feel fear if you weren't standing close to something meaningful. Fear is a signal that you're about to expand. It always shows up when growth is near. And if growth is near, then strength must be as well. There is a part of you that fear cannot touch. It's the part that doesn't need approval. The part that remembers why you started. The part that knows how far you've come even if no one else sees it. That part of you is where your power lies. Not in your circumstances, not in your resources, but in your decision to keep moving, to rise again, to try one more time. That's where your real strength is. Fear has no loyalty to your future. It only wants to keep you where you are. But strength, your strength, pulls you forward. It whispers a different story. One where you are not a victim of fear, but a challenger of it. One where the obstacles don't define you. They reveal you. Every time you face what scares you and move forward, you reinforce the truth that you are capable. Every time you get back up after falling, you prove to yourself that fear doesn't get the final word. It's easy to forget your strength when fear is loud, when the unknown feels overwhelming, when the risk feels too high. But strength isn't about knowing what's next. It's about trusting yourself even when you don't. It's about remembering that you've made it through every hard day so far, that you've faced things that once felt impossible and kept going, and that whatever comes next, the same strength that carried you before is still inside you now. Fear will always knock. It will always try to sit in the driver's seat of your life, steering you away from the very things that could set you free. But now you know better. Fear may speak, but it doesn't decide. It may show up, but it doesn't get to lead. Because now you understand the truth. It's not about being fearless. It's about being bold enough to move anyway. You don't need more time. You don't need more permission. You don't need perfect conditions. What you need is the decision to start, scared, unsure, imperfect, but determined. Because everything you want, everything you're capable of becoming, is waiting just beyond the walls that fear built. This is your moment, not someday, not when you feel ready. Now, your dream is real. Your strength is proven. Your voice matters. So stand up, step forward, speak louder. Don't let fear stop you. Let it wake you up.